Where did you get that tattoo? Sir, it's nothing. Just an old mistake.
The limousine door swung open. Bryce Whitfield stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks, ready to fire another driver. Then he saw it. A faded tattoo on the man's forearm, a wolf howling under a broken moon. Bryce's briefcase hit the pavement. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. The driver, Walt Duncan, pulled his sleeve down fast. "Sir, it's nothing. Old ink. Bad decisions." "That symbol," Bryce said, "belonged to 3 people. One is dead, one is me." Walt's hands started shaking. "Who gave you that tattoo?" Bryce grabbed his arm. Walt looked away. "A man I buried 20 years ago." Bryce's face went pale. "That man," he said, "was supposed to be my brother." Bryce didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, staring at an old photograph. 2 boys, arms slung over each other's shoulders, both with the same wolf tattoo. One was him. The other was his brother, Cole. Cole had vanished 20 years ago. Everyone said he'd drowned in the river behind their father's estate. There was a funeral, a closed casket, a grave with his name on it. Bryce had cried at that grave for years. Now a driver named Walton was wearing his brother's tattoo like a stolen coat. By morning, Bryce had made a decision. He wasn't firing Walt anymore. He was investigating him. He called his assistant. "Pull everything on Walt Duncan. Background, family, everything." "Sir, he's just a driver. Do it." By noon, the file was on his desk. Bryce opened it with shaking hands. Walt Duncan, 41 years old, no known family, no birth certificate on file before age 19, just appeared, got a job, got an apartment, disappeared into an ordinary life. A man with no past didn't just have a tattoo like Cole's. He had a secret. Bryce marched down to the garage where Walt was polishing the town car. "Who are you really?" Bryce said. Walt didn't look up. "I'm your driver, sir. That's all I need to be." "That tattoo isn't a coincidence. My brother had one exactly like it. Same wolf, same broken moon. He got it the summer before he died." Walt's rag stopped moving. "Cole Whitfield is dead," Walt said quietly. "I read about it once. Tragic story." "Then how do you know his full name? I never said it." Walt froze. That's when Deborah Whitfield walked in, Bryce's stepmother, sharp heels clicking against concrete, diamond earrings catching the light. "Bryce, darling, what is going on down here?" she asked, though her eyes were locked on Walt like a hawk sizing up prey. "Nothing that concerns you," Bryce said. "Everything concerns me. I run this estate now, remember? Since your father passed." Deborah's smile was thin. "And staff, who caused disruptions, get replaced." Walt lowered his eyes. "I apologize, ma'am. I'll get back to work." "See that you do." Deborah's gaze lingered on Walt's forearm, on the tattoo peeking from his rolled sleeve, before she turned and walked away. But Bryce saw it. The flicker of recognition in her eyes, the way her jaw tightened for just a fraction of a second. She knew something. That night, Bryce followed Deborah's car to a part of town he didn't recognize, a rundown storage facility on the edge of the city. He watched her unlock a unit, disappear inside, and emerge 20 minutes later carrying an old, weathered box. She looked around before sliding into her car. Bryce waited until she left, then broke into the same unit. Inside, buried under old blankets, he found a stack of documents. Adoption papers, medical records, a birth certificate, not for Cole Whitfield, but for a baby boy given up by an anonymous mother 22 years ago. Attached to it was a photograph of infant Cole in a hospital bassinet with a nurse's note scrawled on the back. "He'll never remember, that's the point." Bryce's blood ran cold. His brother hadn't drowned. He'd been erased. Bryce stood in that storage unit for a long time, the photograph trembling in his hand. "He'll never remember, that's the point." Erased. Not drowned. Erased. He drove home in silence, the box of documents locked in his trunk like evidence from a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. The next morning, Bryce called Walt into his office. Walt stood stiff by the door, jaw tight. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Bryce slid the photograph across the desk. Walt's face drained of color. "That's you," Bryce said. "As a baby. and someone wrote a note on the back that says you were never supposed to remember anything. Walt's hands curled into fists. I don't know what you're talking about. Then why are you shaking? Silence stretched between them. Finally, Walt spoke, voice cracking. I have dreams, ones that don't make sense. A big house, a woman with sharp heels, a boy who looked like me, laughing on a swing set. His eyes met Bryce's. I thought I was losing my mind. You weren't dreaming, Bryce said quietly. You were remembering. Walt sat down hard, like his legs had given out. 22 years ago, my father had an affair, Bryce continued. The woman died in childbirth. My father didn't want the scandal, a bastard son threatening the family name. So he paid people to make the baby disappear. Foster homes, sealed records, a new identity. And when I was young enough to forget, they told me my brother had drowned. Walt's breathing turned ragged. So I'm not Cole. No, Bryce said. Cole is who they buried in an empty casket, because there was no real brother who died. There was only you, hidden away, raised as no one, so a wealthy family wouldn't have to explain you. Walt shot to his feet. Deborah knew. Deborah married into this family 8 years ago. She found out about you somehow. Maybe old paperwork, maybe blackmail. And instead of exposing it, she used it. She's been controlling my father's estate with that secret for years. Right on cue, the office door swung open. Deborah stood there, flanked by 2 men in dark suits, the estate's private security. I heard raised voices, she said, smiling like a woman who already knew she'd lost. Is there a problem? You knew, Bryce said, standing. You knew Walt was my brother, and you buried it to protect your position in this family. Deborah's smile didn't waver. I protected this family's reputation. Do you understand what a scandal like that would have done to the company? To the stock price? To everything your father built? He's a person, Bryce said, voice rising, not a liability. He's a stray, Deborah snapped, who should have stayed lost. Walt's fists clenched at his sides, but he said nothing. Years of being invisible had taught him how to swallow rage. Get them out, Deborah told her security men, gesturing at Walt. He's terminated. And you, Bryce? Her eyes turned cold. Watch yourself. This family has ways of dealing with people who cause problems. That was a mistake, because Bryce had already called someone before this meeting. The door opened again, this time revealing Detective Marsh and 2 uniformed officers. Deborah's smile finally cracked. What is this? This, Bryce said, pulling out a folder, is fraud, falsified death records, and obstruction. I had a forensic accountant go through the estate's finances last night. You've been siphoning company funds through shell accounts for 6 years. Funds that should have gone to Walt as the rightful second heir to this family. That's insane. I also found the private investigators' reports you hired to track Walt for the last 3 years, Bryce continued, making sure he never got close enough to remember, making sure he never got close enough to claim what's his. Detective Marsh stepped forward, cuffs already out. Deborah Whitfield, you're under arrest for financial fraud and obstruction of a legal inheritance. You have no proof. I have the storage unit, Bryce said. I have the documents. I have the photograph with your handwriting on the back. Deborah's face went white. The security men backed away, unwilling to be associated with what was unfolding. As officers cuffed her wrists, Deborah turned to Bryce, venom in her voice. You'll regret this. This family will fall apart without me managing things. This family, Bryce said, is finally being put back together. They led her out in silence, heels no longer clicking with authority, just dragging against the floor. Walt stood frozen, staring at his own hands like he didn't recognize them. You're not a driver anymore, Bryce said, stepping closer. You're not staff, you're my brother, and this family owes you 22 years it stole. Walt's eyes filled with tears he'd been holding back for 2 decades. I don't know how to be someone's brother, he whispered. Bryce placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let's figure it out together, starting now. 6 months later, the Whitfield estate looked different. Not because of new paint or renovated wings, but because of who sat at the dinner table. Walt Duncan, now legally recognized as Walt Whitfield, sat across from Bryce every night, still adjusting to napkins folded a certain way and silverware he didn't grow up using. You're staring at the fork again, Bryce said, smirking. There's 4 of them, Walt muttered. Why does one man need 4 forks? Bryce laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. The court case against Deborah moved fast once the evidence came in. Fraud, obstruction, falsifying legal documents. She'd spend the next several years in a cell far smaller than the estate she once controlled. The company's board, once terrified of scandal, found something better than a cover-up, a redemption story, a lost heir found. A billionaire brother reunited with the family that never stopped searching, even when they didn't know they were searching. Stock prices didn't fall, they rose. But none of that mattered to Bryce. What mattered was watching Walt slowly become someone who believed he deserved a place at that table. It hadn't been easy. Walt spent weeks flinching every time someone raised their voice, a habit built from years of being treated as disposable. He still parked cars out of instinct, still called household staff sir and ma'am, until Bryce gently corrected him. "You don't work here anymore," Bryce reminded him one evening. "You own part of here." Walt looked down at his hands, the same hands that used to open car doors for men who looked right through him. "I spent my whole life invisible," Walt said quietly. "Now everyone sees me, and I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to know yet," Bryce said. "You just have to stay." One afternoon, Bryce found Walt standing at their father's grave, the wolf tattoo exposed under rolled sleeves. "I used to think this tattoo meant nothing," Walt said. "Some ink I got in my 20s. No story behind it. Turns out it was the only piece of my real life that survived." "Dad gave us matching ones," Bryce said, standing beside him. "Before everything fell apart, I forgot until I saw yours again." They stood there together, two brothers, one raised in marble hallways, one raised in shadows, both marked by the same broken moon. "I don't hate him," Walt said finally, nodding toward the headstone. "I used to think I would, if I ever found out the truth. But I just feel sad. Sad for the boy who never got a chance to know he had a brother." Bryce put a hand on his shoulder. "He knows now." Walt gave a small nod, blinking hard. "Come on," Bryce said. "Deborah's old office. I want you to see it. It's yours now." Walt exhaled, following his brother toward the house that once denied he existed. For the first time in 22 years, he walked through the front door instead of driving up to it,